Hello? There we go. Hello, everybody. Good evening. Welcome to the 32nd Annual Great American Think-Off. Yeah. So one of the things I learned early on working at an art center, maybe this is any job, is you have to embrace flexibility and you never know what's going to happen. So one thing that happened tonight is that our singer, Peyton Lawson, got strep throat. So she is not here to sing the national anthem. So we decided to come up with a new plan, and that's why you all got the lyrics to America the Beautiful. And we actually were talking about how this used to be kind of a sing-along tradition, and that really is kind of a nice way to kick off the event. So we have Kip Peltonini here who's going to lead us in singing, and you all can join in. And I think we should stand. I think that's a good way to start. So please stand, and Kip will lead us.
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountains' majesty above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crowned thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful for pilgrim feet, whose stern impassioned stress a thoroughfare for freedom be across a wilderness. America, America, God mend thine every flaw. Confirm thy soul in self-control, thy liberty in law. Oh, beautiful for patriot dream that sees beyond the years, thine alabaster cities gleam, undimmed by human tears. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crowned thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Thank you.
That was lovely. Thank you all, and thank you, Kip, for leading us, especially at the last minute like that. So I'm so happy to see you all here today. We have a wonderful crowd tonight. I hear we ran out of programs. We did have some extra ballots, so if you don't have a ballot and need one, you can check right outside the door. Obviously a really fun problem to have to sell out of our program, so thank you all for showing up tonight. My name is Betsy Roeder. I'm the executive director here at the Cultural Center. I've been in this role since 2015, so somehow a decade has passed, and wow, it's been quite a ride. The Cultural Center is a very multidisciplinary art center, so we have performing arts, workshops and classes, gallery exhibits, an artist residency program, a sculpture park, and a variety of annual community events like the Great American Think-Off. We're really proud of our track record in doing this work. We've been cultivating the arts in rural America, if this says for 25 years, that's not true, it's 35. Okay, typo, 35 years. We've been in our Main Avenue building for 33 years, and we have had 32 years of cultivating civil debate here through the Great American Think-Off. Of all of our programs, the Think-Off has had the broadest reach over the years in terms of both publicity and participation. And while we do redact all personal information when judging the essays, we do collect demographic information, and it's always interesting. So I'll share a few statistics from this year. So geographically, 25% of our entrants were from Minnesota, 25% were international, and 50% were from 28 other US states. In terms of gender, 48% of entrants were female, 47% were male, and 5% chose not to state their gender. Age-wise, our youngest entrant was 12, our oldest was 86, the median was 40, and the average was 46. Our top age grouping was 11 to 20-year-olds at 31% of essays received, while 51 to 60-year-olds were the lowest age group at only 7% of the entrants. In terms of occupations, 30% were students, 11% were retired or semi-retired, 10% writers, 6% artists, and 4% teachers. We also received essays from an auto parts worker, a dairy farmer, a fast food worker, a school superintendent, a lawyer, a house painter, and a poet, just to name a few. So over a 32-year history, we've received essays from all 50 states and more than 30 international countries. Each year we host around 150 events through the Cultural Center. Last year we had over 7,000 people that came to our programs, and we really do enjoy them all, but the Think Off is definitely one of our favorites. It does take a lot of work, and let me tell you, we've got a pretty great team making it happen. I want to thank all the Cultural Center staff, especially 2 members who are retiring this year. Cheryl Banis has been our artistic director since 2017 and has had an enormously positive impact on the Cultural Center and our region. She will be deeply missed. Additionally, our most tenured staff member is also retiring this year. Tammy Kazma is the only person who's been at the Cultural Center longer than me. She started in early 2011. Tammy's our facilities and programs assistant, and her hard work and dedication to the Cultural Center and Think Off will be greatly missed. Just to put the disclaimer out there now, if something gets forgotten next year at the Think Off, it's definitely because Cheryl and Tammy aren't here to get it done. So will you please, are Cheryl and Tammy, are you guys in here? Are you here? I told them that they should come in so they could be applauded. Okay, let's, so wave if you're here. Let's give a round of applause to Tammy and Cheryl. Thank you. Cultural Center board members, Think Off committee members, and volunteers. This event simply wouldn't happen without all of you. It takes a village to host a Think Off. I want to thank finalists, honorable mentions, all entrants whose written words keep us going each year. The press and the media who help us tell our story and spread the word. All of our partners locally, we have the Whistle Stop Bed and Breakfast, Grassroots Ottertail, which provide these beautiful plants and flowers that decorate our stage, and Cheryl does a wonderful job arranging them and choosing them. The New York Mills School for allowing us to be here in this comfortable auditorium instead of smashed in the Cultural Center. We definitely would not fit in there this year. As well as Overflow Creative, who is our partner with all of our creative work. We have many business and individual sponsors that are noted in your programs. Please support these local businesses. This is how it works. In a small town, we all have to work together and lift each other up. So really grateful for that support. And finally, I want to thank all of you for supporting civil debate and for showing up, for buying a ticket, maybe even becoming a member or making a donation to support our work, connecting with old friends and making new ones, and keeping an open mind tonight. I also want to welcome all those who tune in online. We're happy to reach a broader audience thanks to the benefits of technology and our tech expert, Devin Sundstrom, who's back in the booth. We appreciate the interest in the Great American Think Off, and we invite you to make a contribution to further this work using the link in the description of the video if you're able. Civil discourse has always been the leading value of the Great American Think Off. The importance of being able to disagree respectfully, to listen to each other, and to find common ground cannot be understated. Recently, in our small community of New York Mills, we've experienced some profound losses. Things have felt heavy and dark. Today, the state of Minnesota has suffered tragic acts of violence against 2 of our elected officials and their partners. It's hard to find the words to express the heaviness this brings. Let's take a moment of collective silence to honor those we have lost and send light to those who are grieving and healing. Thank you. Now, while there has been much heaviness lately, tonight we're here to offer some light. The Think Off is a celebration of civil discourse and connections, arguably more important now than ever. This sometimes feels like lonely work, but then we see the essays start rolling in. We see different media outlets picking up our stories, and we show up in this auditorium and we see all of you, and we realize we're not alone. Now, while I won't comment directly on this year's topic of truth, I never want to sway anyone's votes, I will say that if you look at the logo this year of the prism, you'll see that both sides are reflecting light. Whether you believe in one beam of light or a multicolored prism, we invite you to join us in being points of light out in the world with everyone you come in contact with. Thank you all for joining us in these efforts to be light, to connect, to listen, to be okay with difficult conversations, knowing that we won't always agree, but at the end of the day, there's so much more that connects us than divides us. In closing, I'd like to thank Minnesota Humanities Center for supporting the Think Off once again this year. Minnesota Humanities Center envisions a just society that is curious, connected, and compassionate. They believe in the power of humanities to connect people and communities, bridge differences, interpret the complexities of our world, and positively shape our collective future. We feel these beliefs beautifully align with the values of the Think Off and the Cultural Center, and we're so glad that they agreed and have supported us, not only with an event sponsorship, but also by sending one of their organizational leaders to moderate our debate this evening. On that note, I'm pleased to introduce that moderator, Trygve Throntvedt. He is the Director of Strategic Partnerships at Minnesota Humanities Center. In his role, Trig builds and stewards relationships that hold the potential to promote understanding, justice, and human flourishing through storytelling and creative civic work across Minnesota's diverse communities. It's a pretty great fit. It's been a joy to get to know Trig, and I know you'll enjoy his presence tonight too. Please help me welcome moderator Trygve Throntvedt.
It's a big stage. That's the reason I outwalked my applause, I'm sure. Thank you, Betsy, for those opening remarks. Thank you for having me back again, and thank you for your partnership with the Minnesota Humanities Center. Before I give you some logistical instructions, don't unwrap your candies during the debate, those types of things. I just want to reflect upon what Betsy said regarding the unspeakable tragedies this morning in Brooklyn Park and Champlain, Minnesota. And to thank all of you for showing up here, whether this is your first time or your 32nd time, and demonstrating your commitment to exploring your values, to reflecting on your values, to exploring the values and reflecting on the values of other people, to thinking and learning and hopefully working across differences, rather than seeking always to win battles or defend positions at all costs. I thank you all for being here and working to expand your personal circle of the we, so that all of us as a state and a nation and a human family can do the same. So thank you all for being here. Please turn off your cell phones. You will be more successful in making friends and expanding your circle of the we if your cell phone does not go off in the middle of the debate. I'm sure you all know how to do that and probably don't need a demonstration. Can I get a verbal yes from everybody that you have checked your phone? Yes, okay, thank you. Please do, however, feel free to use your phone and blow this event up on social media, I think is what the kids said maybe in 2005. make even more people in more countries and more professions and vocations and walks of life want to submit essays to the Great American Think-Off and show up in New York Mills, Minnesota, the Broadway of the Midwest, for this wonderful event. Just let your friends know how much fun you're having and how much fun you had when you leave here tonight. We'd love for this event to continue growing and thrive. Okay, I want to give you just a quick rundown of the format of the debate, and then I will introduce our debaters, and we'll get started. In the first round, the two people arguing that there is one truth will read their essays and present their arguments, or rather refine their arguments, by answering some pre-scripted questions. Then you, the audience, will vote on who made the strongest argument. Not necessarily the argument that you initially agreed with, but who made the strongest argument. Votes will be collected along with any suggestions of questions for the final round. We can't guarantee that your question will be integrated into the final round, but if you have a great question, they do, when counting the votes, review those, and we sometimes do insert them into the debate script. In the second round, the two people arguing that, no, there are many truths, will read their essays and present their argument. Then once again, you will vote on who made the strongest argument. We will collect those votes along, once again, with any suggestions for questions for the final round, in which, of course, you will have someone from the first side arguing against someone from the second side. So when thinking about questions for the final round, think about questions that would be interesting for someone debating against the other side of the question. The ballots for the first two rounds are inserted in your program, if you're wondering where those are. Then there will be a 20-minute intermission where I will do my best to entertain you. I could sing America the Beautiful again. I know some other songs. We'll figure it out. In the third round, the winners of the first and the second round that you chose as the audience will debate one another. And the audience, you, will once again vote to select the winner based upon who made the strongest argument. What's the theme here? What are we voting on? Who has the nicest jacket? Who made the strongest argument? Then there will be a short intermission to count votes, and then there will be an award ceremony presenting 2 bronze medals, 1 silver medal, and the gold medal to America's greatest thinker. Okay, are we ready to figure out who the greatest thinker in America is? Round 1, there is one truth. I'm about to introduce the debaters to you. Each of them will be asked 2 questions. The person asked the question will be allowed 2 minutes to answer, with the other contestant given 1 minute to respond. Craig, our timekeeper, will wave signs, letting people know how much time is left for their answer. And I believe we have secured a cowbell. If you're missing a cowbell, we will return it at the end of the think-off. A coin toss has determined that David Eckel of Clayton, North Carolina, will read his essay first and take the first question in this round of the debate. David will be followed by Pavitra Krishnan of Troy, Michigan, who will read her essay, and then we'll get to the questions. So David and Pavitra, please join us on stage. Don't make them walk without applause. Come on. That's a big stage.
Evening, everyone. Thanks for coming. This is called The Nature of Truth. Outside my back door lies a forest. Though small as forests go, just several hundred acres, is nonetheless intricate and complex beyond human comprehension. We might count and catalog each of forest's million trees, But what of other plant life, from ferns, moss, and lichen to shrubs, grasses, and mushrooms? One could discover every deer. But what of squirrels and raccoons, owls and warblers, snakes and salamanders, beetles and butterflies, fish and frogs? Let us not overlook mineral features, from great boulders to sand, stream-fed ponds to outcrops and ravines that wrinkle a forest's well-worn face. However lengthy, any description of forest will be but a step on a path stretching to the horizon. No matter, a census or a parts list is not a forest being. Its being is an emergent property, as different from its components as are the living from the dead. Endowed with such magic, might forest help us better consider the nature of truth? Last year, perhaps 50,000 people could truthfully say they visited forests. But while their reports would likely bear some resemblance to mine, each visitor was gifted an experience and a memory as unique as a fingerprint, as one of a kind as a snowflake is said to be. Does that suggest there's one forest? Many. Some might contend our forest is what one thinks it is, and thus it truly exists in 50,000 different forms, one per mind of each visitor. I find it more reasonable that a single same forest is perceived in 50,000 different ways, all of them approximations, and none of them true despite all effort. No two forest visitors see, hear, taste, smell, or feel an identical set of foresty things. Those they do sense are but a tiny slice of all that's there to experience. It's easy to miss the hawk overhead when one's looking down, preoccupied by a circus of turtles in the pond. Some things lurk outside the range of our senses and understanding. I don't know precisely what. We can infer something is there. Visiting dogs may exhibit great interest in certain tree trunks or stop and test the air for reasons they know, though our noses do not. Dragonflies apparently see color in dimensions to which we humans cannot relate. Birds chirp in patterns, but the information and possibly ideas they may convey to one another are largely mysterious to us. Finally, we interpret what we sense through the prism of prior experience. The same stimulus can evoke a drastically different response from even the closest friends. One might be fascinated by a spider, the other terrified. Why then? If the forest is such a uniquely personal experience for each visitor, does it matter that there is one forest instead of many? It matters when we compare notes, when we tell others about our experience and they tell us about theirs. The amount of knowledge we gather through direct experience is dwarfed by the amount of indirect knowledge we gain from others through spoken language, books, and the internet, to name a few sources. Civilization has been built on indirect knowledge. Imagine if each of us had to discover fire and invent the wheel on our own. The value of indirect knowledge critically depends on its close relationship to common reality, upon there being just one. People with even the best intent can be mistaken in their observations and beliefs. So discrepancies between direct and indirect experience are bound to arise. How could they be resolved? One proven correct, or at least more likely than the other, if multiple truths were in play. If a forest visitor claimed to have seen turtles wearing clown noses, merrily beeping horns as they rode unicycles across the surface of the pond, you might smile at the circus image evoked and not give credence to the story as fact. But if there were many truths, might this be one of them? Broad implicit agreement that there is only one truth may seem theoretical and academic, but our world would crumble without it. That none of us is in possession of that truth doesn't argue against its being, only that we ought to be humbler and more cooperative in our mutual search for greater grasp of it. The forest isn't likely to give up all its secrets. If it ever does, there's all that lies beyond it to explore. One truth beyond it all.
Thank you, David. Kavita.
This one's titled One Truth. Truth, in its absolute form, has been a subject of philosophical inquiry for centuries. Is there a single truth, constant and independent of human perception? Or is truth itself a construction, an illusion bounded by the limits of our knowledge? While relativists assert that truth is multifaceted, relative to perspective, culture, and experience, such a stance collapses under closer scrutiny. There can only be one truth, absolute and objective. To make such an assertion, however, requires a more unsettling question: does truth even exist? A single absolute truth suggests that the reality is structured in such a way to be coherent and independent of human observation. Math, for example, operates on the principles that remain the same irrespective of interpretation. The equation 2 + 2 = 4 is not subject to cultural interpretation or individual perception. Even in more complex systems, such as physics, the laws of the universe remain the same, whether humans comprehend them or not. If truth were a mere human construct, these laws would be subject to change with belief. Yet the universe behaves independently of our understanding. Yet for all of this seemingly solid foundation, the character of truth itself is elusive. Philosophers such as Friedrich Nietzsche and Jacques Derrida have questioned whether truth is an illusion, a manufactured myth to bring meaning to chaos. Nietzsche infamously claimed that there are no facts, only interpretations, implying that truth is not an objective fact, but a projection of the human intellect. If truth is a construction in every way possible, then it is not an objective thing anymore, but simply a reflection of power, perception, and language. This kind of skepticism forces us to confront an uneasy possibility that the truth is unknowable, if it even exists. Human perception is faulty, filtered through biases, cognitive limitations, and subjective experiences. That which we claim to be true must go through the limitations of our senses and the structures of our knowledge. The color red, for instance, is something different to other species and even to other individuals. If truth is something that stands beyond perception, then the question has to be, how can we ever get to it? Science, which seeks objective truth through empirical evidence, is also outdated. What was once held to be true, for instance, the geocentric universe, was later disproved. This will make us think that the truth is mutable, but that is not true. The objective reality of the universe did not change. Our understanding did. Truth is unchanging, but our knowledge is incomplete. This is a crucial difference. Human knowledge is valuable, but the existence of one objective truth is not negated by our inability to grasp it. If truth exists independently of perception, then why do so many subscribe to the idea of multiple truths? Well, the appeal of relativism lies in its flexibility. It makes rooms for various perspectives and accounts for the messiness of the human experience. However, the multiplicity of perspectives does not necessarily mean the multiplicity of truths. If one person says the world is round and another one says the world is flat, one of them is wrong, regardless of how strongly they may believe it. The existence of illusion does not negate the existence of reality. But even if we assume the truth is one, there's an epistemological issue. Can we ever know it? The limits of human knowledge guarantee that we can at best know fragments of the absolute. If truth is a mountain, we may climb it, but the summit is forever shrouded in mist. We may find fragments of it, but the entirety is always elusive. That doesn't mean the mountain is not there, only that our knowledge of it is incomplete. So we arrive at a paradox. There is only one truth, absolute and independent of belief, but our capacity to attain it is doubtful. To question truth is to both affirm its existence and to acknowledge our limitations. The quest for truth, then, is not creating it, but finding it slowly, laboriously, through reason, doubt, and questioning. Ultimately, the question is not whether there are many truths, but whether we can find the one. Perhaps we are condemned to wander through the darkness of half-truths, always reaching for an absolute we may never quite reach. But even in our skepticism, something is always the same. The truth is out there, even if it is beyond our reach.
Thank you, Pavitra. Thank you, David. The committee has drafted 2 questions for each of the debaters. The first question goes to David, who will have 2 minutes to respond, and then Pavitra will have 1 minute to offer a rejoinder. David, the question to you. In your essay, you describe how different people can experience the forest in different ways, even in how they react to something as simple as a spider. How would you determine the truth of whether or not you should be afraid of the spider?
Well, that's always an interesting question. How does one go about ascertaining the truth of any matter? And by truth, I mean not an absolute, completely fixed, nailed, carved in stone solution. I think of it more as a balance of probabilities, so that we would have chances that a spider would be benign and the chances that it might be fatal if we got on the wrong side of it. I guess we could run some controlled experiments if we had brave enough candidates to blindfold themselves and put their hands in a jar and see what happens. But yeah, there are probably other ways to do it. Probably through indirect knowledge, which is a topic I want to investigate later.
I have 2 young boys who may volunteer for that experiment. Pavitra, you have 1 minute.
I think similar. I think that when it comes to truth, it's reflective of reality, and that's how I define it. So when I think of the spider, if you see 2 people and one of them is screaming and running away from the spider, I'm going to assume the truth is they're scared of that spider, but I could be wrong. If there's another person who takes it home and keeps it as a pet, then I'm going to guess that corresponded to what happened in reality. The truth is that they like spiders. So I believe that truth itself is reflective of how we see things in reality. Whether we run scientific tests or not is dependent on the situation. I don't know if it's necessary for this one.
Thank you very much. Pavitra, a question for you. In your last line, you write, "The truth is out there, even if it's beyond our reach." What is the purpose of continuing the search for one truth if it can never be known with certainty?
I think that throughout history, we've seen the evidence that people are wrong very often. We originally believed that the earth was the center of everything, or the earth was flat, and if we continue believing this way, then I don't know how the logistics of our travel and mapping and geographic systems would be. So I think that the constant search for improvement is something that we need to continue. We need to question ourselves. And I think that we might not necessarily always know the answer to something. We might not ever know the complete truth. But if we go towards finding it, we're getting closer and closer to that puzzle. Like the analogy I made of the mountain, you can choose to only see one side, but wouldn't you want to see the other side if you could?
Thank you. David, you have a minute.
So there are a couple of reasons that you might give up your search for the truth. One is if you think it's hopeless, and the idea of the infinite nature of truth bothers you, that you can't ever reach the stars, you can't ever reach the end of the rainbow, you can't ever reach the horizon, then why bother? That's its own thing, and it's separate from the other reason you might stop searching for the truth, and that is if you actually think that you've found it. It's silly. If you're looking for something and you think you found it, why do you keep looking? I think the reason that truth works, that it's always beyond reach, is that it encourages us to keep looking and our minds keep open and discovering.
Thank you very much. David, the second question goes to you. Stop me if you've heard this one. If a tree falls in your forest and nobody hears it, did it make a sound? In other words, is reality, the truth, dependent upon being observed, or is it separate from observation? You have 2 minutes.
All right, in 2 minutes, we'll talk about objective and subjective reality. Objective reality is what's happening out here, independent of what you may think, feel, or believe. Subjective reality is happening in here. It is based on objective reality, but then it passes through all of the filters and prisms of prior experience and limited perception and misunderstanding and biases that are just mind-boggling the more you dig into them. So the rest of it is that it depends on what you think sound is. You have to define your term. If sound is the pressure waves that are generated in the atmosphere that happen when a heavy object like a tree hits, like a thunderclap, is that the sound, or is it what's perceived in subjective reality? I happen to believe that the sound is the pressure wave. You probably wouldn't be surprised to hear that. And that the perception of sound is exactly that. It's based on something that happened in objective reality. It's perceived in similar yet distinctly different ways by every one of us. Wow, 30 seconds? I don't have to use all
You don't have to use all of it.
All right.
Well, because I have some thoughts. Happy to.
Well, I think the question is really asking, does the tree falling have to be perceived by someone for it to be a truth? Well, if we think about that, why did the tree fall? Because of gravity. Who invented gravity? Newton. No, he did not invent gravity. He put the name to what gravity is. And that's exactly what we did for truth. We put the terminology truth, but truth has always existed before we named it. Gravity has always existed before we named it as well. So I don't think it needs to be perceived by a person for it to actually exist.
Thank you very much. And now your second question. Pavitra, you use mathematics as an example of truths that are constant regardless of interpretation. However, some philosophers and even mathematicians would disagree with that characterization of math. If they're right, and even our mathematical systems are human fabrications, then can we believe anything is objectively true in the universe?
I wish I did better in my math class right now. I think that when I was researching, I found that mathematical physics systems, they try their best to match as closely to reality as possible. And I used a very complicated equation in my essay. I know the 2 + 2 = 4. Luckily, in day-to-day life, when we use it, like I mentioned in my earlier definition, truth is what I believe is reflective of reality, and the mathematical models are correct in the sense that they're reflective to how we use in reality. And I'm sure in some more advanced mathematical models and physics models, which I don't have much knowledge of, there is more difficulty in that. But as I mentioned earlier, it's about trying to learn more and trying to get closer to the truth. So whether it's the mathematicians or physicians that, the physicists who are trying to figure out more and get closer to that truth by studying it and understanding a more complete version of these models to get closer to the truth. I think that the way that it's currently happening, I can see that the truth is reflective reality in terms of how these systems are built.
Thank you very much. David, you have 1 minute to respond.
I'm reminded of all the people of my age who are complaining about trying to teach new math to their grandkids. And they might argue that mathematics is anything but objective. They might say it's objectionable instead. The purpose of mathematics, I think, is to wrap a conceptual model around the real world, try to be able to describe in certain terms that can be understood, and if you solve the problems and work through them, that they have a predictive quality. You can understand what's happening in objective reality better by using the tools that mathematics provides. Whether that makes mathematics objective or subjective doesn't really matter.
Thank you very much. Okay, that concludes our questions round. Each debater will have 1 minute to make a closing statement, and we're going to go in the same order as the coin toss determines. So David, you will have 1 minute to wrap up your argument, and then Tabitha, you will have the same.
Thank you. I want to delve in 60 seconds into the subject of direct and indirect knowledge. I think that holds the distinct promise of shedding light on this question. Direct knowledge is when you go out and you count every lake in Minnesota. Indirect knowledge is when you hear or read that there's 10,000 of them, give or take a few, all right? That's the difference. Indirect knowledge is approximate, but it's usually good enough. Great thing is it's a real-time saver. You can find out about how many lakes there are in Minnesota in far less time than it would take you to go out and count them all. Plus, that information is fact-checked by all of the eyes and ears in humanity over a stretch of time. That makes it useful, and we've built a civilization on it. I think that is strong evidence that there's one reality. We're singing off the same song sheet.
Thank you very much. Tabitha, 1 minute.
I think the one truth argument is really difficult because there's two difficult things you have to tackle. You have to tackle that we might never fully understand what that one truth is, and we may never find it. And the second thing we have to tackle is we have to admit the fact that some of the things that we say are truths might not be true, and I'm saying that for myself as well. But our perspectives still matter, but they are not the same as truth. Beliefs can feel deeply real and still not be the truth. Truth can stand apart from opinion, and that is what remains when belief continues to be tested. Even if we never reach complete certainty, the search for truth still matters, and I think that we should keep searching for the truth.
Thank you very much, both of you. How about a round of applause for our debaters? This is I'm sure if you're like me, you're all wishing you could select both of these people as having had the strongest argument, but unfortunately, those two things can't both be true. This theme is just full of potential for groans. And please take some time now to vote on whether you thought David's or Pavitra's argument was the strongest. And also use the form on the back of the second page of your program if you'd like to submit any questions you'd propose for the final round. And you do not have to turn that in right away. You can keep that for use in the wake of the second round of debaters. So make your choices. And there is a bucket being passed around that has every semblance of being objectively real. So do put your votes in that bucket.
Smallville is also accepted.
Although this is confusing, there are multiple buckets. So now,
Oh.
we're faced with a conundrum. Choose whichever bucket blooms and buzzes before you, like the forest. Okay, I'm sorry? Oh, do the contestants vote? I believe the Rules Committee, AKA Betsy, might be able to answer that question. I don't see why not. I'm not sure it would alter the, okay, yes, you may vote, yes.
We could just agree to cancel one another.
Yeah, right.
I'll vote for you if you'll vote for me.
Okay, you've all been able to gaze at our debaters long enough while making your decision. Let's give them another round of applause and let them take their seats. Thank you, Pavitra. Okay, we still have a few more votes to be collected. Okay. All right. Are we finished? Any more ballots floating around in the vast universe? Okay, wonderful. Nope, two more. Well, while we're collecting the final 2 or 3 ballots, it's my pleasure to introduce round 2, where we will have 2 fine debaters arguing that there are in fact many truths. Now remember, you are not judging their arguments based upon how they stack up against the previous round. You're going to be comparing these 2 debaters against one another. Once again, each debater will be asked 2 questions after delivering their opening essay. The person asked the question will be allowed 2 minutes to answer, with the other contestant given 1 minute to respond. So I'd like to introduce Jay Sealing of Miltona, Minnesota. Almost said Minolta. Miltona, Minnesota. And David Lose of Eden Prairie, who will be our 2 many truths advocates. Please give them a round of applause. Oh, you are such fast learners, and you are fast walkers, so that worked out perfectly. A coin toss has determined that Jay will read his essay first and take the first question in the debate. Again, Jay will read his essay, then David will read his essay, and we will move on to the question rounds. Let's get started. Jay Sealing, many truths.
Thank you. I wrote this on the eve of my 61st birthday. My joints ache, I move slower than I used to, I'm bald, and my beard is white. I think I have at least the appearance of wisdom, or at least Socrates. Socrates, who was wise because he admitted he knew nothing. There's a saying that's attributed to Socrates. The beginning of wisdom is the definition of terms. So I asked my grandson about truth a couple weeks ago. I said, Finn, what does it mean when we say something is true? It's a gentler way of asking the question posed by Socrates, which was, what is truth? It means it's real, he replied. I continued, so what does it mean if something is false, not true? Well, that would be not real. He's going to be 6 in a couple weeks. Watching my own kids grow and now observing the development of my dear grandkids, I know there are many truths. Some 40 years ago, I wrote a final paper for an Intro to Philosophy course that argued in favor of one objective truth. And in that paper, I used the story of the blind men and the elephant. It's a poem by John Godfrey Sachs, where each man touches an elephant and describes what it is like. 6 different answers come from the blind men as they touch different parts of the elephant. Touching the leg, it's like a tree. Touching the trunk, well, it's like a snake. Touch the ear, it's like a fan. Touch the side, it's like a wall. Each person's account is true, based on their experience and senses. But each is wrong, or at least not complete, because there is objectively an elephant, but they cannot know it. Now, the blind men would need to share their experience and create a composite of what they know an elephant to be. And even then, it would be 6 different ideas or truths of what an elephant is. Even if an outside observer could use descriptions to guide them, they would still have varying images in mind. When I asked Finn how we know something is true or real, he said, well, you see it. Even at this age, he's begun to realize that truth, things that are real, are known from experience, from our senses. What if you couldn't see something, or if someone was blind, how could they know what is true? Someone could tell them. And even in that John Sachs poem, there is a narrator who tells us there is an elephant. We create truth, what is real, through communication with each other. Rhetoric is epistemic. We construct shared narratives, stories that are true to us. Shared narratives are powerful, and they don't need to be true to be powerful. When I was my grandson's age, my younger brother and I would bug each other. We'd pester and we'd tease. And according to a shared narrative in our family, I was pestering my brother and he was chasing me through the yard, eventually around the neighbor's house. I would go halfway around the house and then I'd double back. He would try to go the opposite way. And then he spotted the garden hose on the ground, and he stood behind the corner of the house, ready to spray me when I came around the corner. My footsteps approached, he jumped out and pulled the spray trigger, and water gushed forth and soaked our elderly neighbor from head to toe. A few years ago, my brother, upon hearing this story once again, asked me, "Do you remember that?" Honestly, no, not really. Me neither, he replied. Did it really happen? Was it true? A shared narrative doesn't have to be true to be powerful. Even if we lose memory of such an event, it can remain true. That also means things that are not true can be told and sold as true. The earth is flat. The emperor has fine clothes, or the election was stolen. There are as many truths as there are stories, and stories matter. Jimmy Buffett notes this in his song, Semi-True Story. It's a semi-true story, believe it or not. I made up a few things, and there's some that I forgot. But the life and the telling are both real to me, and they all run together and turn out to be a semi-true story. But the life and the telling are both real to me. As my grandson said, true is real. So they are both true to me. As there are many lives, many people, many tellings, there are many truths. Thank you, Jay. David.
Thank you. Every fiber in my body wants to believe there is only one truth. Among other things, a single truth provides a reassuring sense of order. As absent any ultimate standard by which to adjudicate competing claims, it feels all too easy to fall into a chaotic relativism. In this sense, a solitary, trustworthy sense of truth seems indispensable to a meaningful, even intelligible life. But as much as I yearn for the comfort of an ultimate truth, I am just not sure there is one. If there were, wouldn't we have established it by now, offering a universally agreed upon version of reality? Moreover, I think insisting on a single truth has contributed significantly to the level of violence and misery in the world. How many wars are fought or voices silenced in the name of truth? Yet for all the violence, a variety of perspectives remain. Are we therefore stuck between the opposite poles of a fervent commitment to universal truth and a despairing resignation to a cacophony of competing voices? Two clarifications may offer a way forward. First, truth is not the same as fact. Certainly there is a dimension of factual truth, those things we can verify through repeated observation, that we depend upon for a myriad of activities, from turning on the lights to starting our cars. But when speaking of truth, we often intend to gesture beyond mere scientific data to the realm of meaning and significance. We may agree, for instance, on the historical factors contributing to the Civil War, the key battles, the number of dead, the political and economic toll. But what did the war mean? Facts alone don't answer that question. But even naming it the Civil War, as opposed to the War of States' Rights, let alone the War of Northern Aggression, betrays our convictions about the deeper truth of the matter. Second, abandoning the claim to a single ultimate truth doesn't mean abandoning making truth claims altogether. The opening phrase of the signature sentence in the Declaration of Independence is helpful. We hold these truths to be self-evident. Self-evident means obvious, apparent to all, and therefore needing no proof, which was both a wise and convenient turn of phrase for Thomas Jefferson to employ, given that there was a whole nation that disagreed with him. Proof remained elusive, but that did not stop him from asserting the truth, or the colonists from risking their lives and fortunes defending it. Notice the verb Jefferson employs, we hold. Might we also hold our truths, asserting them and defending them in the public square and inviting a vigorous response, rather than positing a universal truth that immediately silences contrary voices? Such a move is both bold and humble, strong and vulnerable. Bold in being willing to state and stand behind what you believe to be true, yet humble in neither assuming nor coercing universal acceptance. Strong in the commitment to share unabashedly your deepest convictions, yet vulnerable in not presuming you have perfect knowledge, and are therefore open to reconsider or even change what you once had imagined to be true. If we can hold our truths rather than insist others accept them, we might discover several things. First, we may discover that our truth is persuasive, that as we share what we believe and why it matters to us, others come to believe that truth as well. That can be affirming. Second, in conversation with others, we might discover that truth is more dynamic than static, as our sense of truth changes and grows, which while that can initially be disconcerting, we might end up reassured that the truth arising from honest conversation, even if different than our earlier belief, may be more trustworthy. Third, we may grow in the confidence that one doesn't have to prove something once and for all to believe it, defend it, and sacrifice for it. In turn, that growth in confidence might invite a deeper compassion for those who believe differently. We might even come to admire their ability to hold truth, knowing firsthand that living according to our convictions is both challenging and vital. I am a Lutheran pastor, and so regularly climb into a pulpit to share what I firmly believe to be true. As I do so, I try to remember that claiming truth is more an act of faith than a matter of proof, and therefore requires equal measures of courage and compassion, which may ultimately be just the kind of truth that sets us free.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you, David. The first question goes to Jay. Jay, you begin with the blind men parable to argue that there's one objective truth, the elephant exists, but then conclude that there are many truths. If the elephant objectively exists regardless of the blind men's perceptions, doesn't that support one truth rather than many?
40 years ago at that paper, I wrote it, and that was my argument, that is out there objectively. I got an A+ on that paper, by the way. It was fine. But in the 40 years since, and watching the development of my kids, I realize that in that poem, we only know that there is an elephant separate from the blind men because John Sachs, the poet, tells us. Anything that we are, the claim that there is one truth is coming from somebody who is asserting that. To make that assertion is an act of communication. It's an act of revealing an idea. It is a story. So every effort to claim that there is one truth comes from somebody telling that story. In science and in mathematics, we have Pythagorean's theorem. It is a theorem. It may well be the theorem. It is still a theory. It is named for Pythagoras. The theory of gravity is named, it's Newton's theory. He is the one who discovered it and told that story to others. It has since been tested and followed. And this is what I mean of being of many truths, that there are many stories and ways that these truths are revealed.
Thank you. David, you have 1 minute.
I remember hearing that poem also, and I think the author intended it to invite a level of humility, that we often can only see a portion of the truth. But it struck me at the time, and now too, that the author himself, though, is kind of all-knowing. And so I think one of the important things we'll want to tease out as we go through is the difference between perspective, partial or larger, and a greater sense of truth as reality. And I think it'll be fun to kind of unpack that.
Thank you very much. David, question for you. You present only two options, either fervent commitment to universal truth leading to violence and misery, or despairing and chaotic relativism. I don't write the questions. But is this a false dichotomy? Couldn't the fact that there are multiple perspectives simply mean we're just imperfect truth seekers?
That's a great question.
I did write it. I do.
Did I mention Friedrich Nietzsche, the despairing postmodernist, was a son and grandson of Lutheran pastors? No, I think what I was trying to do for sure was look to the two opposite poles. That I want to be clear, opposing truth does not necessarily always lead to violence and misery, particularly of the two people who are opposing a single truth. It can, though. It can if you believe there's one truth and anyone who disagrees with you is an opponent. And a sense of relativism doesn't need to leave you in despair, but ultimately, if you feel like there is no way to judge or assess any kind of meaningful truth, it can feel rather hopeless. So those are the two far poles. I think there's a lot of room in the middle for a different way, and in some ways, that's what I try to articulate. Abandoning that as a false dichotomy and imagining that there's a different way to think about, to hold, to offer, to confess, to witness, to bear your truth that doesn't have to end up in violence or despair.
Thank you. Jay, you have 1 minute.
I guess as kind of thinking of myself as a bit of a relativist, when I see it as disparaged and hear of the cacophony of ideas and we're all going to collapse because it's anarchy, that is the extreme polarity of that. But I am of one that is also of a faith that people can be civil in their discussions and disagreements, and that this concept of many truths, and particularly the idea of truth coming about through rhetoric and through interactions and communication with each other. It is the unburdening, it is the revealing, as David mentioned. That is where we are finding truth. Truths.
Good catch.
Question for you, Jay. You stated, we create truth, what is real, through communication with each other. Are you saying we're just making up reality as we go? Please explain.
That is the slippery slope of this part of the argument, and it's something I've struggled with, and I've gone down a few rabbit holes on all of this. Because if we're simply creating our own, then everything is all individualized and it is very relativistic, and then where is their real true meaning? So in dealing with this, part of it is struggling with how can we know what is out there. And so that's where I go back to this idea of where that creation is. It's within that activity, it's within the action of communicating with each other. Through forums like this, we come to an understanding. We hear perspectives from other people, and we take in those perspectives, we respond to those perspectives. Maybe we come to agree with those perspectives. As David said, this becomes a holding of our truth becomes something that is persuasive. So this entire action of what it is to be human is ultimately a sharing and retelling of stories. And it's not just myths and fairy tale stories. It is the story of your experience with the forest. It is the story of your experience in a debate, of what you saw, what you taste. All of those things are deeply, deeply personal, and we don't reach a level of understanding with others unless we have those communicative interactions. Truth is ultimately an act.
Thank you very much. David, you have 1 minute.
I feel like the question implies that the idea that we make up our truths is really scary or maybe even bad. And on one level, I completely agree. But at the same time, I think it's important to realize that we make up truths all the time with consequences, including valuing someone based on the color of their skin, or evaluating certain actions based on an identified party or background. And those truths are powerful, which is why I think where Jay and I agree most strongly is that the key element to growing is conversation. Genuine conversation where you speak your truth, you state your conviction, you listen carefully, you go back and forth, and hopefully truth ends up not being at least entirely made up, but that we have confidence that through the process it gets more real. Whether or not it's ever univocal or universal or just one, I don't know, but we can do better. And I think that's what we're both advocating for.
Thank you. David, the next question goes to you. You argue for holding truths rather than claiming universal truth. Yet you stand in a pulpit weekly proclaiming Christian doctrine as true. Isn't there a fundamental contradiction between your philosophical position and your pastoral practice? How do you reconcile that apparent conflict? I'm the son of a Lutheran pastor too, so again, I don't write the question.
It's another great question. I think we are called to confess and witness and share, which is very different than try to prove. And I think ultimately truth and faith are closer to love than they are to mathematics. In the sense that you can share your faith and it's not invalidated if someone doesn't believe the same way you do. If I say 2 + 2 = 4, and Jay says, no, on a good day it equals 5, we're kind of immediately in opposition. But if I tell someone, I love you, I hope to high heaven they say, I love you too. But if they say, I didn't know that, which is not what I want to hear back, it doesn't invalidate my truth, my confession of love. And so when I'm in the pulpit, I am absolutely proclaiming, sharing something that I believe is true in and of its own. And I try to be persuasive and share my experience and hope that others believe too. But whether they do or not, we're not opponents if they disagree. And it doesn't invalidate my truth. And so I do think there's a fundamental difference. And I think preaching has actually changed. In another era or in some traditions, it is about proving.
Mhm.
But in the tradition I come from, it's about confessing.
Thank you very much. Jay, you have 1 minute to comment.
I like that perspective that the truth is about confessing. It is about revealing. It comes back to what I'm saying in my essay as well, this idea of story and the idea of sharing that. I mentioned, Socrates says the beginning of wisdom is the definition of terms. And I started out with this idea of truth being real. And as I've come to realize through this whole process and the rabbit holes I've gone down, is that truth is not a thing, it's an action. And so rather than seeking a thing, truth, we should just be truthing, speaking, truthing, sharing things with one another.
Thank you very much. You now each have 1 minute to make a closing statement in the same order as the coin toss determined. Jay, your minute begins now.
So I have come to believe there are many truths. Was on the other side. I reached this other conclusion, as I explained in my essay. I recognize the importance of shared narratives and how we relate to each other. And since writing this and preparing for this discussion tonight, I've gained further, deeper understanding. And it comes from looking at the Gospel of John 14:6. And I'm sure it came up in other essays, but none in our group. I am the way, the truth, the life. That's the passage. The truth. The word that is translated as truth in the Greek is aletheia. It literally means unforgetting. It is an action. It is the action of unforgetting, of unburdening, of revealing. It's the act of unforgetting implies and involves telling stories and bearing witness because stories matter.
Thank you very much. David, you have 1 minute.
Jay, thank you for the essay and for the response, especially that last part about John. That will show up in a sermon. Very good. I actually think this is the harder of the two debates because we agree on so much, particularly that there are a multitude of truths that are worth articulating and defending. If I disagree with Jay on something, and it's a huge if, it's probably that I think Jay is defining it in terms of a different perspective on or perception of the truth. I think it goes a little deeper. I don't think we're just talking about different perspectives on what is real, to borrow from your grandson, but different beliefs about what is actual reality. Is there reality? Is there a truth? And that example around the elephants again, the elephant is helpful. Someone does assume they know the whole thing there. And you can compare a leg and a trunk and an ear, but what if one person sees the whole and says it's an elephant, another says it's a flamingo? That is the deeper, more interesting question that I hope I get to explore a little later more.
Thank you very much. Well, we've learned that a pastor can be a philosopher and that a young philosopher can have a successful career in another field. Please, another round of applause for David and Jay. And please begin voting. And also, if you have any suggestions for questions for the final round. Once everyone's done voting and writing their questions, we'll have a brief 20-minute intermission, and then we'll move on to the final round. I'll remind you again, the form for submitting a candidate question is on the back of the second page of your program. Once you've voted, you are welcome to go out in the hallway and grab a snack or a drink of water. We'll start again in 20 minutes. As people are filing in, how about a quick show of hands? Who's here for the first time wow. Okay, nice. So for all of you rookies, you no longer, now that you've been through one of these, you can't call it the Great American Think-Off. You have to call it El Gato. It's the gato. It took me a while to figure that out. For you rookies, gato is Great American Think-Off. That's where that comes from. It's not like my high school nickname or something. How many people have been to 5 of these events? Wow. Okay, excellent. How many have been to 10? Oh, wow. I suppose if you've been to 5, you've been to 10. Okay. Keep your hand up if you've been to 15. Wow, okay. Keep your hand up if you've been to 20. Okay, wow. Why are you in the back? You should be up here. Okay, 21. Wow, amazing. 22. Do I hear 23 going once? 24. Have your arms just locked in place? Do we need 25? 26? So we had 3 people who've been to 25 Los Gatos. Let's give them a round of applause. Okay, well, there has been a count. There was a recount. There was an audit. We brought in new ballot machines. We did the software update. We went to court. We went to court again. We appealed. We do have 2 finalists. And this was razor thin. And even if it wasn't, I would tell you it was. But it was. Our final debater arguing that there is one truth is, where's my drum roll? I don't get a drum roll or anything like that? Okay, thank you. Pavitra Krishnan from Troy, Michigan. There's no home court advantage here. I guess you guys were both from elsewhere, outside. And our finalist arguing that there are many truths. Pastor David Lose from Eden Prairie, Minnesota. Okay, if I could ask Pavitra and David to come up on stage, please. I'm going to humiliate myself by flipping a small metal object in the air and failing to catch it. All right, yeah. For purposes of this exercise, despite your philosophical differences, both of you are going to agree that there is one head and one tail. Okay?
Trust you.
Okay, you trust.
Take it on faith.
All right. All right. You're our guest. Call it in the air. Ready?
Head.
Heads it is. Okay. Pavitra, you will get the first question. Do you need to take a little breather? Do you need some water? Can we get going? You want me to just keep stretching this out interminably? Okay. Pavitra, there is one truth. Claiming there is only one truth can lead to intolerance of another person's opinion of what is true. Wouldn't accepting the idea that there are many truths make the world a better and more peaceful place? Why or why not? You have 2 minutes to answer the question.
I disagree that accepting that many truths would make the world a better place, because we've seen it happen in the world already multiple times. During COVID-19, there was many things going around. People had many news outlets and many different beliefs, whether it's like they had many different truths. They said wearing masks is not good, taking the vaccine is not good, and they all each claimed that that was their own truth. And when they believed these different truths and everyone had their own truth, that led to many lives being lost and many hardships were faced. Instead, if we just accept it at the beginning, there's many perspectives. Let's see, like, based on what we saw, how people reacted to the coronavirus and what was actually helping people. What our scientists found is wearing masks prevented, staying 6 feet apart, social distancing is what helped prevent the spread of coronavirus. And like finding the closer truth, the singular truth, and rather than accepting each individual truth was what was helpful for everyone. I think that truth is very powerful, and if everyone gets to say that their truth is correct, then how can we ever say something is wrong? Things have to be wrong for us to learn and to grow. And just saying that truth, everyone and everyone's beliefs is true, while it's nice and it makes us feel good about ourselves, it's very dangerous because truth is a very powerful term and we have to use it very cautiously. I think that we can accept that we all have different beliefs and different perspectives and still accept one another, but accept that there is a singular truth that we should go towards.
Thank you very much. David, you have 1 minute.
I think the answer is highly contextual. I think when it comes down to a matter of science or in that realm of factual truth, then there's tremendous benefit by not imagining that there are endless truths. You can't say I'm going to run off the cliff, but I believe I will fly, and expect anything other than an untimely death. But in many other contexts where it's not a matter of science, but a matter of conviction, of belief, of faith, the things we actually stake our lives on, then I think it is beneficial, if not to accept innumerable truths, at least many truths.
Thank you very much. The next question is for you, David. Where do we draw the line tolerating people's insistence on unproven truths, especially if their insistence impacts others? For example, do we simply tolerate people who refute the research and refuse to get measles vaccines, thereby spreading deadly germs to medically vulnerable people? Are they entitled to their truth?
Again, a lot of this comes back to that distinction between fact and maybe factual truth and maybe narrative truth is a good term by which to describe that. And I think the Enlightenment, the Western Enlightenment, was so beneficial that gave rise to the experimental method and modern science and medicine. It had so many triumphs that I think our temptation is now to imagine there is only one kind of truth, and that is factual or scientific truth. In the ancient world, you had an interest in observable facts, but you also had a sense of narrative. And I think when it comes, like, again, I so value factual truth. When I take my car to the garage because the brakes aren't working, I want a firm factual knowledge of how brakes work. I don't want a story about how brakes work. But in other areas, like what is the meaning of life? What is the value of freedom? What is most important? What's worth living for, sacrificing for, dying for? Those are things that can't be tested in the laboratory. And so when it comes to all those questions that can be tested in the laboratory, then I would love to see a proliferation of evidence and some common sense and say we are willing to agree on this, whether I like it or not. But when it comes to meaning, significance, the things we really value, I think that's where we need to entertain. People will bring different truths, and we can't suppress them, but need to at least listen and be in dialogue with them.
Thank you. Rita, you have 1 minute.
I think that I have mentioned science a lot, but when we think about things in general, it can get a little confusing. But even if we think about something simple like equality, right? Like women having equal rights. Many, like not that long ago, actually, people did believe that women didn't necessarily need to have jobs or votes. And we don't necessarily have scientific proof for everything that women should have equal rights. But we've seen things over time when we've given more rights to women and we've seen the happiness increase, and those things aren't really scientific necessarily, but it's just the fact that when we get closer to something, we can see there is more of a central one truth. It's not necessarily always scientific, but it's more something that grows over time and we learn over time.
Thank you. Vitra, many religions believe God is the way and the truth. Is God the one ultimate truth you're talking about? What would you say to believers searching for the truth through religion?
I think this goes back to what I said about beliefs. I think that everyone can have their beliefs, and I'm very open to everyone having their own belief in religion. I have my own beliefs in my own religion, and I'm sure all of you in this room will choose or choose not to have that as well. But I think, as I mentioned before, it can get dangerous if we say that's the truth, because if I start insisting that my God, my religion is the truth, and you come to me and say, well, this is my truth, then are you saying that your truth is not equivalent to mine? Does that mean that my truth is wrong? Suddenly I'm offended. Suddenly I'm hurt. Suddenly you're offended. Suddenly you're hurt. Rather, if we just shared it as, hey, this is my belief. This is my own choice, and this is what I believe. And if you say, this is your belief, and this is what you believe in, then we can come to more of an agreement rather than saying something so like set as the word truth and saying something so specific.
Thank you. David, you have 1 minute.
Over the years, people have spent a lot of time and ink trying to prove the existence of God. And what I found is that if you already believe in God, they're very persuasive. And if you don't, a little less so. And so I can say God is truth, and that's a confession of faith. Others might say something very different. But what I think is interesting is that, in a sense, each of us has an ultimate truth that we will look to. And so I think that's where it kind of gets interesting, is exploring how do we construct those differently? How do we dialogue? How do we move forward in a way that is constructive and positive and doesn't simply mean if you disagree with me, you're my opponent?
Thank you, David. If there are many truths, who should decide which truths are taught in schools? Philosophers, priests, scientists, oligarchs? Who is most likely to have the truthiest truths?
Well, I mean, me. No, and very seriously, isn't that what each of us feels in the moment? That when it comes to arbitrating or deciding truth, we kind of start where we live. And so I think each of us has that momentary instinctual, yes, I know what the truth is. I will make that decision. This is where I think, to circle back to the conversation Jay and I were having, where conversation becomes so incredibly important. That David Tracy, a Roman Catholic theologian who died actually very recently, would talk about the hard rules of conversation. How do you state what you believe about curriculum or anything else very clearly? And then how do you listen in a way that you can repeat back to your dialogue partner their position, so they say, yep, you've got it. Can you ask questions? Can you get somewhere? Can you move? Ultimately, I think the decision will need to be decided, or when it needs to be decided, if you don't emerge a consensus, then what I hope for is some kind of communal body, whether it's an elected body or the community, that finally does make a decision. But I hope when we do that, there's a boldness to say, this is what we're going to teach, or this is what we believe is true, but also kind of a humility that maybe you say, well, we might be wrong, but this is what we believe right now. And based on our ongoing conversation and experience, be open to revision and growth and development.
Thank you. Pavitra, you have 1 minute.
It's really interesting because I'm in school right now. You guys have all been in school, but I go to IU, and there's many international students. And I remember I was having a conversation with a friend once, and she's from Vietnam. And so we were talking about how we learned the Vietnam War in school. And I promise you, we had very different accounts of what we learned. I think in our school, we talked about it for maybe a week or 2 weeks. For her, it was almost a semester worth of classes. So when we think about what those schools taught, they probably thought they taught what they had as their truth. And that made it complicated because we had different truths that were taught to us. So did we even learn a truth, or did we just learn the different perspectives that those institutions gave to us? So I think it's very important, especially in education, especially today, that we're very careful what we present as the truth to students, people that are learning. And I think that it's very important that we are very cautious of what we share.
Thank you very much. Pavitra, In the movie The Matrix, that recent movie that I'm sure you're very familiar with, people are hooked to machines that feed them artificial experiences of normal life, which they believe are real, but the real world is actually a dystopian hellscape. However, if their world is real to them and much more pleasant, isn't that enough truth for them? Must we seek the truth even if it leads to misery?
I'm going to twist this question around. Don't be mad at me. I haven't watched The Matrix, but I have seen The Truman Show. And
Totally fair.
in The Truman Show, Truman was living under this lie, right? But why did he so badly want to pick out those small things which made him realize this is not reality? He wanted to know what was really true, and he knew the world he was in was not the truth. And I really think that as people, we are naturally drawn to finding what truth is, just as Truman did in the movie. And so I completely messed up your question. I'm sorry, but
Again, I don't write the question.
but I think that whether it be in the show, movie, I think that we do want to search for a singular truth, because that's how we live and are defining our lives, by searching for that truth.
Thank you very much. David, you have 1 minute.
I just want to say stellar answer. You didn't even see the movie. The premise of The Matrix is actually based on Rene Descartes, one of the Enlightenment philosophers, who wonders, what if this is all a dream? How can I know anything is true? And I think that's the question that kind of haunts the movie. It continues to haunt us, and I think it's a worthwhile question. And I do think sometimes reality is really, really hard. But in my experience, it's almost always better than not reality. And so I hope that invitation to keep questing and searching and climbing the mountain, conversing, all the metaphors we've been using, continues to inspire us, knowing that sometimes it's really hard, but it's better than being unreal. And if we go there together, it's at least a little easier than trying to do it alone.
Thank you very much. David, let's examine the question of whether God exists. God either exists or doesn't exist. It's either one truth or the other. It can't be both. Although people may have beliefs one way or the other on the topic, isn't it true in the end there can only be one true answer to the question of whether God exists?
I think the super interesting thing about convictions, beliefs, is that whether they are actually true or whether you can fundamentally, finally prove them to be true, holding them makes a difference. They are functionally true in the way we live. If I believe in an ethical value that believes everyone is equal, that shapes dramatically the way I live. If I believe that there is a hierarchy of value and worth based on color of skin or gender or all kinds of other things, that functions in a powerful way as true. And so when I'm faced with that question, how do you know God exists? The honest answer is, I do not. But the story about a God existing and creating and caring and loving, I find really persuasive. And it shapes the way I live. And until I hear a better story, I'll keep believing it and trying to live it, even if I can't ever finally, ultimately prove it.
Thank you very much.
I think it's a really hard question. I think that with this, I think that there probably is one truth out there. I think there's either a God or there's not a God. And I don't think that in my lifetime that I will be able to find that out, considering people have been trying to find it out for thousands of years and they haven't, and I don't think I'll be able to do much better. But I do think that there is one truth out there. And like I said before, I think that people can have any belief and any perspective that they want, but that doesn't change the fact that there is still one truth out there. We can all look at it from a different lens, but the answer is still the same at the end.
Pavitra, can all true statements about the one truth that you're defending Can all true statements eventually be proven scientifically?
Could you repeat?
Can all true statements eventually be proven scientifically?
I think that we can prove them to a certain extent. I'm not sure if it could be fully, but I think that with a lot of statements that I've been saying are typically more like philosophical, which are harder to be scientifically proven. But I think that like many people can take measures to figure out whether or not these statements are true. But as I mentioned earlier in my essay, we may only ever know fragments of the whole truth. But I think that with further research and further studying and further discussions like this, we will get closer to that whole truth, that whole singular truth.
Thank you. David, you have 1 minute to come.
No. That is, no, not all truths can be proven scientifically. I think, again, that sort of fact-value split becomes really important, and I love facts, that we live our lives based on facts. But values are the things that get us up in the morning. Values are the things we're willing to sacrifice for. And so I think that becomes the really interesting question. And thinking a little more about the question, does God exist? Maybe a more interesting question is not, do you believe God exists, but what kind of God do you believe in? A God of love, a God of punishment, a God of violence, a God of peace. That becomes something you can't prove, but has dramatic implications for the way we live our lives. And we can converse and talk and wrestle and wrangle and maybe get closer to something that we can all live together with. But I don't think all truths can be proven scientifically.
In a complementary vein, is the proposition that there are many truths a belief or a fact? Or perhaps better, could one prove it?
2 minutes? No. No, I don't, anything in that realm is really hard to prove, but at the same time, I don't think not holding a truth, not believing truth is possible either. I mean, even the person who would say, there is no truth, there is no truth, there is no truth, I kind of want to say, boy, it sounds like you think that's true. Now what do we do? So I think that's where, again, life gets really, really interesting. No, I can't prove that there are multiple truths any more than I can prove there's a God or that there's just one truth. But the claim I make matters, and the way we talk about it matters, and the civility with which we talk about it really matters. And all of that is shaped by values and convictions.
Thank you. Stop there. Pavitra.
I'd like to clarify that nothing I've said today, I think, is the truth. I just said my belief in this situation. And my belief is that there is one truth. Because I can't stand here and say that I know for a fact that the truth is that there is one truth. And that's why I think it's complicated. I think that I can, like I said, I think we all hear there's two sides. There's people that believe that there are many truths, and there's people that believe that there is one truth. So at the end of the day, I still think there's one truth.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, you each will have 2 minutes to make a closing comment. Pavitra, you won the coin toss, which everybody saw and verified as true. So you have the honor of starting song.
Okay. I think the main thing that I want to say is when we start treating personal beliefs as personal truths, we raise the emotional stakes in every situation. If my belief is the truth, then any disagreement becomes an attack on my identity and my beliefs and my truths. But when we separate belief from truth, instead of calling our experiences and what we have as, and what our perspectives are as the truth, it becomes the door to, it opens the door for dialogue, for change, and for growth, which is why we should use the term truth more carefully and just be open to more perspectives.
Thank you. David, you have 2 minutes.
I want to offer a word of thanks to Betsy and Pam and the whole team of the Cultural Center, to the other finalists, particularly as our moderator, and to you all for showing up, for being here, for supporting the Cultural Center, which is such a gem, and for supporting civil debate and discourse, which I think the events earlier today prove are just more necessary than ever. So here's where I'll close. My dad was a Marine. My younger brother also served in the Corps. My son currently serves in the U.S. Navy, and I held very briefly a commission in the Navy as a chaplain candidate. We love our country. And I still think, amid the violence or the rhetoric or the divisiveness, living at a time where it feels harder and darker than maybe in the years I was growing up, I still think this is the greatest country there is. That is my truth. But I'm not surprised or shocked or disappointed that others living in other lands may feel differently. And I think that's really important to acknowledge how powerful your truth can be, and that it doesn't have to be negated by someone else's holding a different truth. A couple weeks ago at Mount Olivet, the church I serve, we had a funeral and we sang a hymn there that I haven't heard in a long time, and it summed that up really well for me, and so I'd like to sing it for you. Just kidding. Yeah, none of us would enjoy that. I will read just the first stanza. For those of you who know music, it's set to Finlandia by Jan Sibelius. And here's the lyrics. This is my song, O God of all the nations, a song of peace for lands afar and mine. This is my home, the country where my heart is. Here are my hopes, my dreams, my holy shrine. But other hearts and other lands are beating with hopes and dreams as true and high as mine. I would love if we could all live our truth, not just try to prove it.
Thank you very much. How about a round of applause for our two finalists? Excellent work. Keep the applause going. Woo! Okay, I'll invite David and Pavitra to take their seats. It's time for you to vote. I have one request. Please do not fold your ballots. It actually makes it harder to count. They're new machines, I told you. So please just pull them out and put them in the bucket. And then do not go anywhere, because for one thing, you're probably going to want to find out who won. And we also have some other people to honor in just a few minutes. Does everyone have a ballot who needs a ballot? You must put your ballot in the bucket for it to be counted. If a ballot is cast and it doesn't land in a bucket, it is not true. It does not exist for the purposes of this event. That's my truth. How about a round of applause for our ballot collectors? Just schlepping up and down. Not even a bow in their backs, carrying these buckets up and down. Where are the what? Oh, Yeah. I don't know. I could make up a story. Once there was a troop of Boy Scouts. No, now there is not. Okay. I think we can move on to the next section of our program. Many people enter this contest every year, and I, for one, am glad. Well, I don't want you to take this the wrong way. I was going to say I'm glad I'm not on the committee because there are many fine essays I know that are received every year. And of course, not everyone's effort can be recognized, but we are able to recognize a few people beyond our 4 finalists, and some of them are even here. So I would like to recognize several of our honorable mentions and ask them to come up to the stage and receive a certificate from Betsy. We have a few right here in the audience. Lori Fritz, will you come up and join us, please? And forgive me, Marcia or Marcia Witt? Marcia Witt? Oh, it's that Marcia. And 2 former finalists, Ron Stewart. Not to be confused with Rod Stewart. This is philosophic royalty. And I bet you haven't heard that. And Blaine Rada. Congratulations to these honorable mentions. I'd also like to mention several other honorable mentions who were not able to be here, but their essays will be posted on our website. I'll read them all and then please give them a round of applause. Miriam Santos, Sherry Vavra, Catherine Tencha, and Angela Lupe. Please give them a round of applause as well. Okay, so while we are counting ballots, I have been asked to entertain you all. And, oh, someone stole my mug. This is how great my show was. It depends on upon a coffee. There's no mug there anymore. What's that? Yeah. I don't know. I don't even dance much anymore after I tore my meniscus. What we did want to do is recognize a few other people, namely the sustaining members of the New York Mills Regional Cultural Center. Are there any sustaining members here? Are there any You were supposed to sit up in the reserve section. You were too busy. You've been to too many of these things. You were worried your arm would get stuck up in the air and no one could see. Thank you, all of you, for being a sustaining member. There are 66 sustaining members, a number that we would like to see increased to 67 or 68 or 69 or 166. I'm sorry, was that a funny joke to someone in the, oh, okay, yeah. I know you can do funny things with numbers. One thing that's not funny, but just wonderful, is that these sustaining members, these 66 folks, contribute a combined $18,000 annually to the New York Mills Regional Cultural Center. And for that, and this is what I really wish I had that mug, they get a mug, which is beautiful, and it's worth at least $18,000. And you can even pick one up if you decide to become a sustaining member today. You can pick one up right from the Cultural Center, a short 2.5 block walk away. They won't even make sure your credit card is fully authorized because they don't want to have to mail the mug to you afterwards. So this is your chance. Sign up as a sustaining member. It really is deeply important work, as Betsy and as David noted, to sustain a center like this that brings people together not only in the community, but from all around the region and all across the world to learn from one another. And whether there is one truth about which we're learning or many, we understand ourselves and whatever it is we are searching for and holding on to guide us through life better if we think, learn, and work together. So consider that. Consider becoming a sustaining member for the New York Mills Regional Cultural Center. And while you're at it, Betsy, am I allowed to point them to the Minnesota Humanities website too, or would that be really gauche? Well, it's mnhum.org. You can become a member of the Minnesota Humanities Center too, but you get a mug tonight if you go to the Cultural Center. Last year, we had a little bit of fun while we were waiting for the votes to come in, brainstorming next year's big question. We can do that, but we got several questions from the audience that we weren't able to weave in, of course, all of them into the final debate. And so I thought maybe I'd read a few of them because some of them were, really all of them were quite good. These are in no particular order and I don't have time to read them all. Let's start. Let's see. If you believe that there is only one truth, and truth is unattainable by humans, then how can the belief of one truth be true? In math, 1 + 1 = 2. However, when you add a raindrop to another, then 1 + 1 = 1, as it becomes a larger drop. How does that support the idea of one truth? If this is a grade school child, I would like you to become friends with my child. If it's an adult, I'm not trying to impugn your question-making ability. I love that question. I thought you were ringing a bell, but I was supposed to shut up. But it's really just metals clinking. I think this one is, age 9. Okay. This is wonderful. Age 9. Okay. If there's only one truth, how do you know that flowers are flowers? Or that flags aren't actual animals? This becomes especially confusing, actually, because many flags have animals on them. If there's only one truth, we have to believe things are what we say they are, but what if they aren't? This is an excellent question. We have results. Okay. I'm just trying to think. They were all great. I particularly like those two because those are the first two on my pile. Thank you. We received a record number of question suggestions this year. Just another sign that this event continues to grow and thrive. Okay, we have winners. Is there a particular way that I'm supposed to announce these? Yes. I would like to invite all of you up on stage, all of you, not all of you, although you are all winners in my book. If I can invite David and Jay and Pavitra up on stage, please. And we can give them all a round of applause now. Okay, you might as well just keep clapping because our two bronze medalists are David Eckel of Clayton, North Carolina, and Jay Sealing of Miltona, Minnesota. Now, in order not to spoil the surprise, Betsy and I are going to simultaneously read the gold and silver medal award winners. Otherwise, you'll know right away based on the first one that we tell you. Or should we just skip right to the gold and then you'll figure it out? We'll honor both of them. The gold medal winner for the 2025 Great American Think-Off is I'm just kidding. I know who it is. It's David Lose of Eden Prairie, Minnesota. And the silver medal winner, Pavitra Krishnan of Troy, Michigan. Will you all please come a little bit closer to the stage, but not fall off so that people can take pictures and give you all one large round of applause to send you off. Thank you. That concludes our evening. Everyone is invited, not up on stage, but to the Cultural Center where there are mugs for sale, $18,000 annually, and beer, wine, snacks for a much lower price. We hope you all will join us. If you don't, please come back and join us again next year in 2026 for the Great American Think Off right here in New York Mills, Minnesota. Thanks again, everybody, for coming.